Hi there, and welcome back to another Delphox Cards and Collectibles video. This is a bit of a different video than what I normally do. I got this in my brain. It's something I've always wanted to do. I'm going to toss it out on the channel. If you enjoy this, go to comment down below. Hey, I like the reviews. I think regardless of people comment, I'm going to make them because I'm having a lot of fun doing it. You can see by the title that I'm going to review the MCU. My wife and I said, let's go through the MCU. Let's rewatch it all. I thought, I'm going to do this for the channel. I'm going to throw something out there, and then I can go back and take a look at how I felt about these movies. And actually, this first one surprised me here. What I did was I went on ChatGPT and I had it make me a rubric for how to score these MCU movies. I typed in all the stuff I wanted and it came out with this. I'm going to be ranking the movie in 10 different categories, and then I'm going to take that combined score and that'll be my score. And at the end, I'll actually get to see what do I actually think are the best movies. I'm not predetermining when I'm going to score things. I'm watching it and I'm putting numbers down right when the credits roll. So that's going to be the series. We're just going to go through all the MCU projects that I can. Maybe not TV shows, but maybe. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. So obviously, we don't do any Marvel, anything, without starting with Iron Man. And so the first category for Iron Man is the story. Now, we rewatched this movie, and I looked at my wife several times, and I said, I didn't even remember that happened. I had no clue. Obviously, you think, yeah, I've seen Iron Man. I've seen all the movies. I've probably seen it 2-3 times in my life. I forgot about a ton of it. The story's great. I actually scored the story a 9. I thought it was really well done. The start of Iron Man, it's really captivating. From the minute you start that movie, you're dialed in to what Tony's got going on in his life and what he's doing, and he's interesting because he's rich and yet he's taken. Really, really good. I'll give it a 9. By the way, spoilers, if you haven't seen Iron Man, well, I'm sorry, spoilers. Maybe you shouldn't have clicked the video. I don't know. Next category that it shot out for me was characters. I don't know how else to say this. Tony Stark is one of the best characters in all the MCU, and he carries hard. And then you got Pepper. You've got a little bit of Rhodey, obviously not the same actor in there. And then Obadiah, I would say, is like your main crew there. Happy Hogan being in there too, but not a big role in the first movie. Tony bumps this to a 9 on his own. Pepper's very good. I think Obadiah's good. I'll talk about him later. And I think the Rhodey in this movie actually is a little flat, and I'm glad they actually made the switch in the later movies. But characters get a 9. You can't not like Tony Stark. He's the reason we have the MCU. Then we have the visuals. I gave the visuals an 8. I still think they're fantastic. I'm watching them going, man, for 2008, this is really darn good. This is a good production. There's just some moments at the tail end of the movie when Obadiah gets into the suit where things look clunky. It almost looks like an early, or maybe like Transformers 2, which those are fantastic visuals, but there's moments where you're like, yeah, I'm watching something created on a computer. It kind of doesn't suspend your disbelief for a second there. The next one we have is direction. This is a tougher one for me, not being like an official film critic. The direction of the movie I thought is good. Like, Tony is great, and Pepper is great, and everybody's great, and the pacing is great. And so I'm going to give it an 8. I thought it was pretty fluid of a movie. I thought everything works very well. The only thing for me is the direction in the third act. There's some things where I'm like, I don't know if I buy that as much, but I would say direction overall very good. The dialogue and the humor for the MCU eventually becoming like the humor factory, I would say it's got a good enough amount of humor. The dialogue is pretty good for the most part, in my opinion. I scored this a 7. There's nothing here that's going to blow your mind. I found myself going a few times during the movie, and I'm a laugher. If you know me, I chuckle when it's funny, and in this movie I had a couple and so dialogue, though, is why this is so high, because I think there are moments when the villain, he takes out the arc reactor out of Tony Stark, and that's a good dialogue moment. Pepper and Tony, and they're having their little like, do we like each other, do we not moments, and those are really, really nice, and they set up a lot of things. Obviously, looking back, hindsight 2020, it ends up being really, really good, and it pays off down the line. But for this movie, it's good. It's okay. 7 is okay. The emotional impact, this has got a low score for me. I gave it a 5. There's nothing in this movie that the stakes are so high that you don't think Tony's going to get out of it. And again, that's me watching it retroactively, going, okay, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movies of Tony, blah blah blah, in the MCU. But upon rewatch, there's not an emotional impact here. There's no point in the movie where you think Tony's going to lose, and so I give it a 5. The only reason I give it actually I give it as many points as it did actually, is that there's a moment between Tony and Pepper at the start of the third act where he looks at her and he says something along the lines of, you were with me this whole time when I was destroying everything, and now you're going to leave me when I'm finally doing good. And that kind of hit me a little bit, so I bumped it up a little because it was going to be in like the 3-4 range, but I gave it a 5. Soundtrack and score. There's nothing in this movie outside of like Back in Black that I even remember. I actually gave it a 7 because I think a great score you'll remember. A good score, though, should just enhance the movie and make it feel good. And I think it did that. It accomplished what it needed to do. It made it tense, or it made it nice, or whatever. I think the score was just fine. It's a good 7. The legacy was another category. I think this category is interesting because we're going to hit some movies where I'm like, the legacy is almost nothing. I mean, you look at Thor: The Dark World, and I'm going to rewatch it, but I think that legacy of that movie is almost a 1, right? And I'm not going to predetermine that. I'll watch it and then score it appropriately. This movie's legacy is a straight 10 for me. It's the highest score I have on this entire thing because without Iron Man, we have no MCU. I mean, we take a look at this poster my wife gave me way back in the early parts. This was an Infinity War poster, early parts of our dating life, and you don't have any of this entire thing. I'm going to see if I can try and find the movie without this movie right here, without Iron Man. So I know there's a little glare there. The Legacy's a 10. It's fantastic. It still holds up. And you watch it and you go, you sparked everything. It's great. The villain. The villain's a category on here. And Obadiah, I give an 8. He surprised me. I honestly, without What If, totally forgot about him. In the realm of Marvel villains, I tend to lean towards the fun ones. I like the villains that leave a mark, like a Thanos, in Spider-Man, like the Green Goblin. This movie, though, Obadiah, I found myself about halfway through the movie, at the end of the third act, going, I wish he wouldn't die. I really like his sinister attitude. His motivations are kind of fun. He's kind of one of those first twist villains, and I liked him. I wish he wouldn't have, I think he would have made an interesting dynamic there. But overall, I'll give him an 8. He's not a 10 by any means, but I really, really, really enjoyed him. Overall enjoyment was the last category, and I didn't give this a 10 or even a 9. I give it an 8. I did find myself in the third act being a little disappointed. Not disappointed, but it lacked a little. I was like, okay, and it's done. And it sets up the MCU, and it's great, and it's obviously, amazing, but there's nothing in that third act that gets you like, wow. I mean, a couple guys, whatever you see there, you've seen in a Transformers movie. You've seen, upon rewatch, there's nothing that blows you away. And I think 8's still a fantastic score. And so I calculated all those numbers. Didn't take too much work, maybe 10 seconds. And an overall score is a 71.8 when reduced down. So that's the first movie on my list of movies here. I'll eventually have an infographic in future videos about the first movie. What does it pay? So we have a 71.8 for Iron Man, which I think is respectable. Anytime I think of my favorite Marvel movies, it's not cracking top 5. I hardly think it's going to crack my top 10 at the end of the day, but it's a really good watch. It's a really good time. It very much holds up all these years later, and I would highly recommend watching it. Again, if you have not seen it, then definitely go dive into it. Sorry for spoiling a lot, but this is a new little thing I'm going to do on my channel. If it's something that interests you, tune in for the rest of them. If not, well, that's all right. We'll still have a lot of content with football cards and figures, but I'm always a person that has many interests. And so I just wanted to talk about this quick. I had a lot of fun doing this. As always, I really appreciate every view that I get. I appreciate you tuning in. May God bless you, and have a good one.